All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, they're getting there.
Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Holtz?
Present.
Trustee Rogers?
Present.
Trustee Suisse?
Present.
Trustee Pazmino?
Present.
Trustee Barrion?
Present.
Trustee Gray?
Present.
Mayor Yukich?
Present. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, I've spoke to most of the other trustees, and I'd like to table J3. There is some objection to this case by some neighbors there, and their attorney wasn't able to make it tonight.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. What now?
She had stated the attorney is present.
No, it's a different attorney. I spoke with a gentleman by the name of Dick Kavanaugh on the way over here. He indicated he had been retained about 2 days ago, and he had a conflict that he couldn't be here tonight, so he requested that it be tabled to the next meeting.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Pazmino?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Barrion?
Aye.
Trustee Holtz?
Motion carries.
Mayor, I have one question about the amendments, and I'm not sure this needs to be amended, but items J7 and J8, where we're going to consider the retirement and the amending the standard operating procedure. I was wondering, should those be reversed? Shouldn't we amend the, if we authorize amending standard operating procedure 2, that authorizes us in J7 then, so I think.
So we should move 8 to 7, 7 to 8.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, so.
Can I have a clarification question? Who seconded the motion to table J3?
Ruben.
Ruben. And then I'm assuming Keith made the motion to switch 7 or 8.
Correct.
I'd like to motion to switch J7 and J8.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Okay, ayes have it. Next is going to be Community and Nature and Harmony Awards. This is the 18th year in the Community and Nature and Harmony Award ceremony. Tonight we gather to recognize those individuals and groups who have demonstrated a commitment to the environment and in the process have significantly contributed to the village of Homer Glen. So without further delay, Trustee Sharon Suisse will start the award ceremony. And Ruben's got to go up. And I got to go up.
For Randy Juris, Bob Moses, Andy Pinelli, Cynthia Rattay, Margaret Sabo, Joe Therese, Gary White, and staff liaison Melissa King and Sue Stylen.
Good evening, everybody. It is with great pleasure to assist the Environment Committee in presenting these awards to recognize how individuals can influence care. I thought that was my phone. I'm sorry. Influence care for the natural environment and to support businesses who showcase Homer Glen's special character and the organizations that bring people together and generate community spirit. We have 11 projects that are receiving awards this year. To help move things along, we ask that you come forward as I read your name. Please proceed to the mayor to receive your certificate and have your picture taken and return to your seat. So here are the prizes. The following individual businesses and organizations may qualify for an award. Homer Glen was founded by a strong volunteer spirit. We continue to have volunteers and organizations working together to make wonderful things happen in our community. As we begin, we would like to recognize the following award recipients for organizing a project to better the environment. Here we go. Ethel Bastis for planning, organizing, and installing a 70-foot boardwalk over marshy terrain at Messenger Woods Forest Preserve. Ethel is away at college, so these are his parents, Constantine and Gail Bastis. So the next up, Nick Martin. Give it up for Nick. For designing and building buddy benches at Reed School for students to relax and enjoy being outside. Next up, Homer Glen Junior Women's Club. For raising funds to donate to the village for the construction of a gazebo in Heritage Park's active core and providing residents with shade and shelter to enjoy the park. So, sign recipients, property owners, the inherent beauty of our community would not exist without the care of our property owners. The following awards give recognition to owners who have set an example and inspired their neighbors and other residents within Homer Glen. These award recipients will receive a sign to be placed on the property which is being recognized. When I call your name, please come forward while I read your award acknowledgement. Proceed to Mayor Yukich to receive your certificate and have your picture taken, and then Gary to receive your sign and then return to your seat. So first up, Adam and Amanda Buglio. For demonstrating how flowers, herbs, and vegetables can blend together in an active backyard setting and showcasing your charming gardens on the Homer Glen Junior Women's Garden Walk. Next up, Mike and Nancy Elliter, for creating a beautiful nature sanctuary filled with a variety of gardens and fairy nooks and inspiring so many others by showcasing your property on numerous garden walks. Debbie Haslinger, for creating a habitat for wildlife which includes a serene pond and waterfall and an attractive landscape featuring a variety of perennials, shrubs, and trees on her property. Walt Konow, for preserving and relocating the New Lenox train station and adding more than 300 trees on your property. William and Lori Kopeski, for beautifying your property with a new landscape featuring stone flowers, native grasses, and perennials. Glen and Kathy Kudla, for creating a beautiful landscape with a backyard sanctuary and wildlife habitat featuring a wild variety of flowers, perennials, and trees on their property. Lorenzo and Lisa Quintana for demonstrating how to transform a drainage problem into an attractive rain garden and showcasing creative ways to recycle ordinary objects into a garden setting on the Homer Glen Junior Women's Club Garden Walk. Congrats. Congratulations. Tom and Eileen Roll for creating a perennial paradise in your backyard and showcasing your garden on the Homer Glen Junior Women's Club Garden Walk. The Rolls are unable to attend this evening. But let's give it up for them anyway. I got a little bit more. So let's give all the award winners a round of applause, everybody. Thank you all for attending this evening and showing your support for this important Homer Glen event. Mayor Yukich and Village Trustees, thank you for your support. Environment Committee, thank you for your assistance in coordinating the presentations. And now, Mayor Yukich, I return the meeting back to you.
We have drinks and cookies, a 10-minute break. Thank you. You the five Homer Glen what it is. Thank you. Order and approval. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 24th, 2019 Village Board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Is there a motion to approve the following closed session minutes, all of which shall remain sealed until future board consideration and approval to release? We start out February 11th and February 25th, 2014, April 8th, 2014, July 22nd, 2014, October 14th and 28th, 2015, November 11th and November 24th of 2015, January 13th, January 27th, 2016, February 24th, 2016, April 27th, 2016, September 14th, 2016, March 8th, 2017, May 24th, 2017, August 9th and August 23rd, 2017, May 25th, 2018, June 13th, 2018, June 17th, 2018, July 11th, 2018, July 25th, 2018, August 8th, August 15th, August 22nd, 2018, September 12th, 2018, November 14th, 2018, December 19th, 2018, January 9th and January 30th, 2019, February 5th and February 18th, 2019.
Shouldn't that be February 8th?
If they're the 18th.
February 8th, not 18th.
February 5th.
Right, there was a one on Wednesday the 5th and Friday the 8th. I don't think we had one. Friday the 8th?
If Wednesday was the 5th, Friday would be the 7th.
Oh, the 6th. I don't think those dates are right. We had a meeting on a Wednesday and a Friday, whatever those dates were.
Well, I have the 5th as a special board meeting on a Tuesday,
On a Tuesday, yeah. And then we had one on Friday,
which is,
the 8th.
I don't have the list with me.
I think. I'm almost positive.
Do you have the list?
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest removing February 5th and 18th. We'll double check that, but, and just to be, making sure we have the right dates, just take those two off the motion.
Agreed.
So we're going to take February 5th and February 18th, 2019 off for right now. The rest of them, we're going to vote on.
Still need a motion.
so moved.
Second.
Discussion?
These are, again, just being approved but not released, right? These are executive session minutes, not open board meeting minutes.
I would just simply say, just a quick thank you to Clerk Nysky-Trakey for coming in and helping clean some of this up. There's been a lot of work put into this, and she inherited some issues, and I think she's doing a great job of helping straighten it out. So, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next, reports and communications from mayor and other officers. Start off, I want to thank everyone for attending our Active Core ribbon cutting event 2 weeks ago. The village has been very patient through the construction, and we are very proud of the finished products. It was great to see so many residents out using the park and having fun. I want to thank all of the volunteers that helped run this event, as well as the village staff for planning such a wonderful day and getting such wonderful weather. Good job. I also want to thank the Homer Junior Women's Club for attending and presenting their donation to help fund the construction of the gazebo. It was a very special day, and we look forward to many more events happening in the park. And I want to give a special thanks out to Trustee Berry and Trustee Rogers for all the work that they did to it, and if the staff, they wrote the back to this one, so thank you very much. We will go over to Trustee Sweet.
Thank you, Mayor. Reporting for the Environment Committee, Homer Glen will hold a joint event, Homer Glen Lands Day, along with the Community Cleanup Event this Saturday, September 28th, from 10 to 2 p.m. The Village and Environment Committee is encouraging residents to explore the village's trails and parks, but also to assist in keeping Homer Glen beautiful. There will be an information table set up in the Homer Town Square parking lot by Jewel Osco. There will be information, trail maps, and supplies to assist with any type of garbage cleanup. Those who sign in and assist with the cleanup will have their names entered in a prize drawing. Homer Glen Lands Day was created in 2002. The Environment Committee has planted a tree on public, excuse me, the Environment Committee has planted a tree on public property every year since then to recognize the day. The village will plant a hickory tree at Evelyn's Gate North to commemorate this year's event. The board has a draft of the handout we will be passing out at the information table. That concludes my report.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
On behalf of the Parks Committee, just a reminder that our trunk or treat is December 26th at 3 p.m., and we still need people to sign up for the, I'm sorry, October. I say December? Just trying to get past the holidays, okay? And we still need people to sign up to have treats out of their trunk, and you can do that on the village website. Yep.
Trustee Berry?
No report, Mayor. Just one quick comment. I think he's gone, but I noticed when Walt Kono came up for his award, his choice of clothing, and I know that he is a very generous man, and I'd like to reciprocate generosity and offer to buy him a Bear sweatshirt in place of the Packers. So, but we can work on that.
We argue about that on a daily basis.
Thank you, Trustee Berry. Trustee Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything prepared, so I'll only be moderately long. I just wanted to mention two things. We had our committee of the whole earlier, and I look forward to whatever we're going to do to help out Homerfest in the upcoming years as far as improving the property. And I know that with our collective heads together, we'll come up with some great ideas. And the second thing is, recently I sold something online, and I just want to reiterate that I used the village property. I met out front when a sheriff was out there to make the transaction. I know I've talked to the lieutenant before about that, and he's very encouraging of that. If they're here, it's obviously not a manned station, but I would encourage people to do that at any manned facility, be it the Lockport police stations or other ones in the areas. It's the safest way to do these transactions these days. You just don't know what you're getting into sometimes. So just wanted to remind everybody of that.
I have two more things to. We also have a Go Green event. Representative Jim Durkin and Senator John Curran invite the public to Go Green. Reducing, reusing, and restoring are the goals for the September 28th Go Green event. The free event will take place from 9 a.m. to noon at Homer Junior High School, 15711 South Bell Road in Homer, Glen. For more information, please visit the village website at www.homerglenil.org. And the last thing is fall season in Homer Glen. Fall is a busy season in Homer Glen with many family activities for residents to enjoy. The full farm fests are in full swing with thousands of visitors each week. Please drive with extra caution due to increased traffic and pedestrians, and take time to enjoy the fall season in Homer Glen. We'll go to the clerk.
No report.
Thank you. Village attorney.
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Public safety officials.
On the heels of what Trustee Gray was talking about, everybody, even though it's not manned 24 hours, we have deputies throughout the village. So should you want to have somebody out there, monitoring what's going on with that sale, you can always call the non-emergency number for the sheriff's department. We could have a car come over here just to be in the area, okay? Oh, 815-727-8575. Again, the non-emergency is 815-727-8575. There's prompts. Just listen and you hit the right digit to get a deputy requested. Thanks.
Lieutenant, did you want to mention anything about what we talked about earlier today?
I don't know if it's... Yep.
Believe it.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Welcome. Village manager. Who? Next is public comment. For everyone who does want to speak, they have 3 minutes. So please sign in prior to the start of the meeting. If you are not on the list, if you want to talk, you have to let me know. First one coming up is Elena Jacobs. You want to come up to the podium, please?
Good evening. My name is Alina Jatkas. I represent Homer Glen Automotive, co-counsel with Mr. Kavanaugh that I believe you spoke to today. I would like to distribute a copy of the letter. Everything is said in the letter. There's documents, there are proofs, there are evidence for you to look at. I won't take a lot of your time. I just want to point out this is an attempt to just get village's attention to the application that was submitted for the special use permit by the business HWM Truck Repair Services. We just want the village to take a closer look to the application, make sure that you consider all the evidence and that you applied the same rules, same law, and so same standards that you apply to other businesses in the village of Homer Glen. We're just standing behind the reputation of the village and the businesses. And as a representative of Homer Glen Automotive, I want to make sure my client's business does not suffer from the neighboring business and that the property is brought up to codes. And again, same fair standards are applied. That's all I wanted to say, but I wanted you to take a look at the letter supporting evidence.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Savieras. Conskinen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I come back with the same questions. I'm asking village to take a look closer to all those documents, what we trying to present to you, all those evidences, and soon as possible to stop all those violences on a property, which ones is making big damage, physical damage, and damage to my business, to my revenues, and owner of a new business and new owner of who is renting a unit A, his name is a Hyder, blaming me about like things never happened and like making a lot of damages like from around everywhere to a property itself, environment, like making a pressure to my business. And I would like you to please take a look closer, and if somebody can go on the property and take a look at the pictures. And that guy has like a time for 14 months to prove what he is saying. He's like a nice guy who can hold his promises, what he was promising, telling everybody like he will bring some evidence for like a garbage or other stuff, you know, what's gonna in this case.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll do on this one because you changed law firm, so we're just waiting to have him set it up because we tabled it today.
No, I didn't change. I'm using like 4 attorneys. I'm using 4 attorneys. There is my second attorney. We connected together. We're working together.
Well, co-counsel right now had us table this until he has time to go over what the papers are.
All right.
So this way, he's got time to read the papers and he knows exactly what it was, and we'll take our time to look at the papers too, so we're educated on what you're trying to explain to us.
All right. Thank you
So,
very much.
You're quite welcome.
Have a good night.
You too. DeMonte, did you want to talk? Okay. Next would be Heidi. You're going to have to tell me the last name when you... I'm sorry, I'll murder this name if I say it.
Haider El Ayoub.
Okay.
I'm the owner of HWM Truck Maintenance. I met all the requirements that the city. I was accused that I, was given wrong information to the city that it was never a truck maintenance before. I provided papers that showing it's always been, and it has a special use permit before. So I was working with Mr. VJ. He came and inspect. I met all the requirements for the special use permit.
Okay. No, this isn't up for hearing either, so this is just, so it's the same thing. We'll bring the meeting up next time. Okay. Right now, pretty much what I explained to him too, where it was tabled because of co-counsel. So we have to wait till the lawyers are ready to bring this before us.
No problem.
And then at that time, we can discuss everything that's going on.
No problem.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Patrick Conley?
Thank you. I merely signed in just because I thought that if we were speaking tonight, if there were any questions relative to engineering or building, I would be able to talk, but I was just seconding.
Okay. When it comes up before us, that give you the opportunity to talk at that time. That's it for public comment for right now. Could you do me a favor, pass it down to Christine? Okay. The next will be, let me see here. Consent agenda. I know. All right, the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the village board. and will be enacted by one motion. Is there a motion to approve the following items? 1, the treasurer's report of cash and investments for the period ending August 31st, 2019. 2, the accounts payable for the period of September 13th, 2019 through September 26th, 2019 in the amount of $1,035,278.73. Resolution number 19-002, a resolution directing village staff to not enforce the 91 days maximum annual display time permitted for temporary signs, code 220-1005 E2B for 159th Street corridor businesses through December 31st, 2020, with further deadline extension beyond December 31st, 2020, subject to a village board approval. 4, the mayor's appointment of Brock Backel as chairman and Brian Kozar as vice chairman of the Plan Commission. And I need a motion. Trustee Gray. Trustee Suisse. Discussion. The reason on this one that we do have two is both the gentlemen that we've put on, that we've changed their appointments on Plan Commission. Sometimes some of them, one of them can't make it, so this way we have another person to step up right behind them. So this way we always have a chairman doing it.
Mayor, I'd just like to say that I think it's a great, not addition, but a great change having Brock be the chair and Brian be the co-chair. And I would just like to say thank you to now former Chairman Mitchell for his service to the village. He certainly went above and beyond on the Plan Commission all the way back to incorporation and many things in between. So
yeah, for a long time, but
yes,
now he wants to retire, and God bless him. Okay, so Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Holds? Aye. Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Barrion?
Aye.
Trustee Piazmino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-041, an ordinance approving a variance to reduce the minimum required lot area from 15,000 square foot to 14,039 square foot for a certain real property located in the R3A single-family residential zoning district at 15144 Mackenzie Drive, lot number 6, Homer Glen, Illinois, 15144 South Mackenzie Drive, case number HG 1918V. Trustee Holtz.
Second.
Trustee Burrion. Discussion.
Looks like a very nice house. Is that lot 6 that's occupied? Oh, I just had a question. Lot 6 is already established with a home?
No, the future design will just be taken into consideration to stay in conformance with the zoning ordinances already in effect. So we'd basically front load a garage rather than side load a garage or something.
Oh, okay. Is front loaded is permitted and everything like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a little confusion on this too, and they clarified this for me at the beginning of the meeting. This variance is actually on lot 6, and this will stay with lot 6. They're building on 7.
Right.
I was a little confused. I thought it was for what he's currently building. So this is a variance so that whoever does build on 6 in the future doesn't have to come before us.
Correct. Which would be probably.
Which is very proactive of you.
Okay. Any other information you need? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Barrion?
Aye.
Trustee Piazmino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
And Trustee Holtz?
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
We appreciate it too. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-042, an ordinance approving 1, special use permit for major changes to a plan unit development, and 2, site plan approval for lot 1B of the Founders Crossing Plan Unit Development located at 14751 South Founders Crossing Road in Homer Glen, Illinois, HG 1917S, Good Life Therapy, RE, and Corp. Incorporated. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Gray,
Second.
trustee Pasmino, by a split second. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to ask Director Gotti, the maximum lot coverage, allowing up to 78%, could you talk about that a little bit? I understand
Sure.
it's going down a
Yeah,
little bit
so-
more now, and with flooding
this
and detention.
78% is the variance they applied for. Since then, they decided to take out the walkway and north side of the building, so there'll be more green space, so it'll be a little less than 78%. So
And are they increasing detention or flood, you know?
they
is
have
that- is it
existing
open?
detention. I believe I can have Mike speak to that for the Founder's Crossing.
Yeah, there was the detention for the entire Founder's Crossing is what was already accounted for in the original, or in the ponds, the existing ponds that are there. There were additional developments that have not been constructed that would still allow additional volume in those ponds.
Oh, okay, so we're, okay.
So the detention would still be there.
I'm looking forward to seeing that empty lot filled.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate, obviously, new business coming into the village, but this was a tough lot. It's sandwiched in there, it's narrow. They're making a great use of it. I appreciate also their willingness to be good neighbors with Pelican Harry's and allow the crossover parking in the hours when they're not going to be occupying their business. It's nice that they recognize that, you know, they're not going to use it, there is a need for it, and they're open and willing to communicate, or to work back and forth. Hopefully some of the other businesses in our neighborhoods will
Follow suit. Is there any other discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Barrion?
Aye.
Trustee Pasmino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holtz?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 19-043? Oh, that's right, this is tabled. That's what I wanted. Number 4, is there a motion to approve ordinance 19-044, an ordinance requiring the registration and maintenance of defaulted mortgage properties in the village of Homer Glen?
I so move.
Trustee Suisse,
Second.
trustee Burrion, discussion? Do we need, Ray up here
Maybe
for
an
anything?
explanation of the program a little bit,
Yeah, Ray, would you like to?
how that works?
I'd like to invite Mr. Stan Urban up. He's with the company that's going to be providing the services for us.
Dan, the podium's yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Trustees, it's very simple. Every town has foreclosed properties in their town. It is very difficult to track who owns those properties, and it becomes property maintenance issues, doesn't know who to send the tickets to, doesn't know who to talk to. What we do is we enter into an agreement, and I believe that's the next item on the agenda is the agreement, and we promise to gather names, addresses, phone numbers, and emails to the bank that owns the property manager's company that was hired by the banks, the asset manager, and the company that the bank hired to register the property. We put that on a web-based system so that all your code enforcement officers or anyone that the city manager decides to have access to has access to that. We do not charge you a dime. In turn, you're going to pass an ordinance that says if you initiate or you are in foreclosure in the town of Homer Glen, that bank must register and give us all that information and pay ProChamps $300 twice a year. The reason that twice a year, the properties are changing hands almost daily. Where one day Chase owns it, the next day Fannie Mae owns it, the next day Third Bank owns it. So that's why we do it twice a year. We collect the money, put up the data and all the information, and then we send you folks a check for $200 for each registration. We retain $100 for our fees. Currently, you have over 100 foreclosures in this town. Other towns nearby that have signed up, Bolingbrook, more than double the size of your town, but they have over 600 active foreclosures in that town. The first week of registration, we registered 113 properties. Mayor Claire is very happy. We also have Hillcrest, and we work with Joliet, and they will be having it on their agenda for November. To give you an idea of Joliet, Joliet will get close to $750,000 annually. They have over 1,700 foreclosures. It's the biggest question I ever get asked is, what's the catch? There is no catch. Everything we do, this gentleman can do, if that's all he did. Sit at a computer and do the research. Any questions?
You don't share the data with anybody but those that are authorized by the village?
We give no access to anyone other than the village, and we ask for a point person, and I'm assuming that would be Joe, and then you can put on other people. Now, here you have your county police or your police department. They may want to have access to it. So if they happen to go to one of these properties, it may be a vacant, foreclosed property at 2 o'clock in the morning. They have to do a board up or whatever they need to do. They would like to probably have access to it, but that's up to your board.
But you don't sell the data, I mean, to anybody else?
No. Nope.
Any other questions? And Joe, you're up to snuff with what's going on with this?
This is really going to assist us and better to keep track of properties that are, we have code compliance issues with currently. Like Stan had mentioned, these we end up having to track down banks, and they transfer this stuff daily. The house on 159th and Bell, or on 159th, is a perfect example. It took us a lot of time to finally track down the bank on that particular property and get some of the property maintenance issues addressed. It's going to assist us greatly.
Good. And then Stan, everything you locate if something new pops up, you know what?
Our people monitor the courts hourly. Joe will see that he may log in at 9 o'clock and he'll see, let's say, 5 registrations. 11:30, he may see a dozen on that page. There's going to be days we don't get any, but we'll get them. Our collection rate nationally is over 85%. The ones that we don't collect, Joe will have access to those that we just say they refuse to pay. And the people that usually refuse to pay are the privately held banks. Chases, the big brother called the feds are watching their books, and if they get a bill, they pay it. Once we find out who doesn't pay, we turn it over to Joe, put a judgment against the property. You have a law in place that says you owe us money. It's your call at that point. We don't file the judgments.
Okay. All right, we're all good. Everyone up here okay? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Suisse. Trustee Barrion.
Aye.
Trustee Pazmino.
Aye.
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Trustee Holtz.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve to have an agreement with, Property Registration Champions Pro Champs for property registration services, subject to final attorney review and modifications?
I so move.
Trustee Suisse.
Second.
Trustee Pazmino. We've kind of discussed it, but do you have any other questions? No? Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Barrion.
Aye.
Trustee Pazmino.
Aye.
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Trustee Holtz.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers.
Aye.
Trustee Suisse.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve resolution number 19-003, a resolution authorizing the release of executive session minutes?
So moved.
Trustee Gray. Trustee Suisse, discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Pazmino.
Aye.
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Trustee Holtz.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers.
Aye.
Trustee Suisse. Trustee Barrion.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going to 8. Is there a motion to approve the amended Mayor and Village Board Standard Operating Procedures, SOP 002?
So moved.
Trustee Burrian,
A second.
Trustee Rogers, discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Trustee Holtz.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers.
Aye.
Trustee Suisse. Trustee Barrion.
Aye.
Trustee Pazmino.
Aye.
Motion carries. Returning to number 7. Is there a motion to authorize the retirement of the 2012 general obligation bonds in the amount of $5,050,000 using existing village funds?
So move.
Trustee Gray, Trustee Pasmino. Boy, another split second. Any discussion?
I would just maybe ask John to walk through this, because I think this is a big deal.
Yeah, this is terrific for the village. This is the bonds from 2012 were 10-year term bonds. They had 7-year call protection, meaning the owners of the bonds were guaranteed that they would get those stated rates the first 7 years. December 1st of this year is the expiration of that 7-year call period, which means we could go out and either refinance those bonds or retire them. They have a 5% coupon rate on them. So if we retire those bonds, we'll save $491,000 of future bond interest. At the last A&F meeting, we presented a couple different scenarios. The first was if we were to refinance the bonds, take that $5,050,000 and go back to the bond market, refinance them under current market terms, that would save us about approximately $250,000. Case 2 was to use existing village funds to retire those bonds. So we would save bond issue cost of about $70,000 probably, and of course the stated bond interest rate, which is $491,000. In order to do that, though, we have to do an interfund borrow from the capital project fund. That's what the amendment to the SOP2 was for. So we have more than half of the funds available to retire the debt, and we were going to borrow from the capital project fund for about 9 months and then repay that back with sales tax, home rule sales tax over the following 9 months. Another scenario that came up that was just kind of an update of an old memo that we had a year or two ago. We discussed refunding the bonds and taking more debt out to see what kind of capital we could raise. So we discussed that because the rates were really good, and the A&F committee agreed that they would like to go forward with case 2 to retire the bonds with existing funds. The nice thing about doing that is that currently our home rule sales tax is obligated for debt retirement. So when we pay off these bonds early on December 1st, we free up our home rule sales tax, which is about $2.8 million per year. And going forward then, home rule sales tax could then be used to fund future capital projects or future debt service, which is just terrific. It's win-win all the way around. Rates are really low right now, and I know that it's appealing to go back to the market. But in this particular case where we would use existing funds, we could still go back to the market. We don't have to refinance these bonds. We could take them out. The village still has the opportunity to go back to the market when it has a better idea what it needs for future capital projects and hit the bond market then. There's also other ways of getting money that may even be cheaper than bonds that have been recently investigating. So just a terrific opportunity for the village to save just almost $500,000. So we will be debt-free December 1st if the village decides to do this. It really needs to do one or the other, because it either needs to refinance them or retire them. And I think A&F had decided that the funds were available to retire, and it was a better avenue to take.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's really outstanding. Plus, the ability to fund future projects is really appealing too, because we really don't have designated revenue streams for capital projects.
Well, I think it's wonderful that we're saving the money that we are saving, and like you said, we are debt-free. I don't think there's too many places in Illinois that can say that.
I'm sure it's temporary, but it's great to take that old debt with the 5% coupon rate out of play. That's the real win.
So even if it's temporary, we're still saving $500,000 in the process, even if it is temporary. And to the mayor's point, I would challenge anybody to show me a town anywhere near us that doesn't levy a municipal tax, is debt-free, and at the same time basically performing the functions of a park district and funding some of these projects that we are funding. There is no town anywhere near us that could claim those things, and I just think it's a really proud day to be a resident in Homer Glen. It will be on December 1st when it officially goes through, but you're saving $500,000, whether it's temporary or not. We are a debt-free community and operating a park district with no municipal tax. It's unrivaled. I mean, it's the kind of thing I wish more residents understood, because I think it's that big of a deal, but I understand it's one of those things that's kind of in the weeds. And if I wasn't sitting up here, I'd probably be in the weeds too, right? But it's one of those things that we need to do a better job of making sure people understand the comparison and what this town, and I've said this before, not just this board, boards predating us. It's not like this is something, this has been the history of Homer Glen. And I just think it's something we should all be proud of.
I agree. It wins on every level. It's absolutely terrific for the village.
I agree, and with that,
Mayor, I have one comment first. I just want to be sure that when we retire this, the debt was originally taken to fund the capital fund or the capital improvement fund?
The bond issue had some restrictions for funding projects. It was the 159th Street expansion project, the water joint agency costs, drainage projects.
Drainage projects.
Those were the three.
That's
so
correct.
when we satisfy these bonds, we're not removing those restrictions from the fund, the monies that are still in that fund.
Now, we still have quite a bit of funds available from that debt issue,
There's
and
$5+
that'll
million
still.
in there, if I'm correct, right? But
Yes.
by retiring these bonds, we're not lifting those restrictions on what we can spend that money on, right? We're still precluded from spending it on anything other than 159th Street, unless, you know, we as a board decide at some future point that we want to ease, relax, change, modify those restrictions. But this action we're about to take right now is not going to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And actually, the only debt that we would really have at that point, we still have some flooding problems, but we have money set aside for the flooding problems. We still have the suit with Illinois American Water.
I just want to make sure that the $5 million that's still in the fund, we're not loosening the restrictions on what we can use that
everything would have to come before the board right now, before that was approved for us to be able to spend that. But we still do have that money. And I mean, that's on top of everything else. So that's, like Trustee Varian had said, this is kind of amazing with what.
So SOP 2 says in it that you can only spend those bond funds on those three designated projects. We didn't change that particular language.
Yeah. So no, we're still good.
Thank you.
Well, this blood thinner is killing me. I don't know what happened. I hate getting old. Okay. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holt? Aye. Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, is there a motion to approve TRIA Architecture's revised proposal for schematic design services for future phases of Heritage Park in the amount of $105,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
I think we need to discuss more of what we had over at the Committee of the Whole regarding what's important to this board. As far as switching some of these, I think the Village Green, the Village Hall area should be the priority, and that's where the design should be focused on right now. I don't see, an open play area is where we used to have a fairway. I don't see a lot of grading and, you know, I mean, our staff can probably go out there and do that. So I don't see how originally open play, sled hill and fishing dock, I mean, those are fairly to me, it's fairly simple design. So, what's getting me is the cost. The cost of doing some of those simple areas versus the Village Green and the amphitheater and the Village Hall. So I don't know. I think we have to decide which way we're going to go first. And I'm with, Trustee Gray says, and same with Carlo Caprio, we have to put our energies on what's going to happen next summer and focus on that. And I don't know if it's going to cost more just to do these designs, just to focus on those two areas and look at the rest later. I think $105,000 for the design is, I think it's a little pricey.
I agree with Sharon. I would like to see the path to the fishing area done internally and removed from the scope of work. I would like to see the open play area removed from the scope of work. I'm not necessarily opposed to the sledding hill being included, but I think that needs to be tied into the parking area. I think that costs will go down because the cul-de-sac area is already graded, per his own words. What was I going to say? In terms of the Village Green area and the immediate impact with the fest, I reached out to Keith earlier today and wondered if the area that's designated for open play could not be handled grading and drainage-wise internally, even if it's just done temporarily for next year, because I don't think at this point anything we try to do is not going to have an impact on if we were to put the fest location in the same place next year as it was this year, nothing's going to have changed. We could do something temporarily, but I also think if we were to do that work on the open play area, hold the fest in that area just for 1 year, that would not delay any work that we might decide to do on the Village Green area. Because as we know, nothing's budgeted for fiscal year 20. So I just feel like we need to kind of think outside of the box and how to deal with that immediate need for the festival. And, as Keith had said to me, well, I'll let him say it, but, we don't know where we're going to be in 4, 5, 6 years down the line with regards to the fest, but having that Village Green is such a great feature and possibly an amphitheater or possibly a permanent structure with a roof. There's lots of options there that are worthy of investigating, but in the meantime, we still have to deal with the open play area and where do we put the fest in the meantime while all of that work is going on. So I just think maybe we can investigate that option a little more. I'm not comfortable with increasing the amount to pay TRIA, as much as I truly, truly appreciate all the hard work Carrie and staff have put into negotiating that fee down. I think that's awesome. And also talking about the aspect of having a dedicated construction management person handling any future phases separate from TRIA. I feel like at this point, this would be an ideal time to hit pause and go out to bid for architectural services, something that was not done with regards to the park. And I know that's a sore subject with some, but I feel we would be remiss as a board not to make sure that we are looking out for what's in the best interest of the taxpayers of this town. Is that my, do I have to stop? Is that my 3 minutes? But anyway, I think there's a lot more discussion we have here to be held here, and I just feel like it shouldn't necessarily be narrowed down to those things that are on that list, because I think, as we've all said, maybe the priorities have changed. So maybe this is the time to hit pause and rethink and think outside of the box.
Anyone else have any comments? This is basically just getting pricing for what it would cost to do the work that they're talking about right now. And I know that in a previous meeting, we all knew that some of it was going to be, the prices were going to change because some of them kind of coincide with work on different things, so you're not going to charge for the same thing twice. The fishing pond, they've already said it's going to be 3 years before there's even a fish that could be caught in there. So to put in a pier right now You really don't need to, but I still would like to know what it costs to do this. The prices could change, but like Trustee Berrien had said before, when you look at the pricing, you're getting prices that are for today, and it could go up. So, I mean, this way it gives us an opportunity to pick what we want to finish up, so we know what costs are in front of us. And the only way we can do that is to have him.
I don't disagree, Mr. Mayor, but I think everyone kind of agreed that we probably won't put a pier in, so why are we paying to? I mean, we're talking about future construction costs on a pier that will never go in. What's the point?
I agree with Mayor, what you're saying about, this gives us the overall picture. And in the committee of the whole, I had mentioned that the way I see what we're doing here is, again, and I'll state this again, I think almost all of us were in the other room, but this is our comprehensive plan for this piece of property that's out behind us. This is our way of speaking to future boards, future administrations on, this is how we were thinking in 2018 and 2019 and what our grand vision was. This is how we envision using this property. I agree that we probably won't build a fishing pier. We might not build the sled stairs. But when somebody says, why did they put a cul-de-sac there? They can look at the comprehensive, what I'm calling the comprehensive park plan and say, oh, okay, they envisioned putting a cul-de-sac there and connecting to the sled hill. They looked at putting a fishing pier in there. Maybe it didn't work, But again, this is our way of talking to that. As far as the $105,000 goes, this really is an increase of $33,000. We, as a board, already authorized TRIA to spend $72,000 on these initial plans.
Correct.
I have no interest in going back and revisiting my vote in January when I voted to approve that $72,000. What we're talking about, what Trustee Holtz and Trustee Suisse are talking about is modifying that contract by removing the fishing, by removing the open play, because now we've had the benefit of 8 months behind us, and we can say, you know what, maybe we're not going to use that. And I don't think that's fair to TRIA. I don't think that's fair to any contractor that we might have come in here that we've signed a contract with, that you changed it somewhere mid-course. Even if you did change your mind, sometimes, you know what, you got to suck it up. So, and now we're asking to go forward and expand that, and I think that, again, that's my own issue on modifying a contract and changing something after we've approved it. But the expansion of their scope, I think, is a good thing in the overall scheme of things, because it keeps the whole thing on one page instead of saying, TRIA's working on this page and somebody else is working on this page, and suddenly we're like, well, wait a minute, these things don't jive and these things don't line up, and we just saw that in our committee of the whole. We saw how the property starts to work and flow and things. And again, these are just schematic designs. We had an issue earlier in our packet piece. The very first issue was the gentleman who came before us wanting to build that beautiful house. We all saw the renders of it. It's a gorgeous house. It's a gorgeous house today, and it's a gorgeous house in 10 years. So whether that man builds that house this month or in 10 years, that's still a beautiful house. This will be a beautiful schematic design, too. So,
but we need to see it.
Yeah.
Well said.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I agree with everything Keith said. However, I feel the open play and the fishing pier are something that can be handled internally, and that's over $7,000. Furthermore, while we approved, the board approved the contract in January, the mayor did not sign it until May. And even in the 4 months that have lapsed since then, the term of that agreement was 2 to 3 months that the schematic designs would be completed, and they have not been completed. So I think it is fair to say we can revisit the scope at this point, since the terms of the agreement have not been met.
Well, I held up on paying him.
But it's been 4 months since you signed it in May, and
Right.
he cites delays on the active core, but I'm sorry, did all of your projects stop? Not just ours?
No, ma'am. Again, the pricing and everything and the schedule that I gave you was kind of starting in January, kind of a different period. Starting the work in the summer is kind of our busy period, so kind of working on that. And then getting the team geared up, right? We're kind of still working on getting some of the details, some of the surveys and so forth. So we're just saying we're doing whatever pieces we can actually do and get that done. And then from our last meeting, which was a month ago, that was kind of when we all said,
hold on, let's go to the committee of the whole before we proceed. So those drawings were actually done a month ago when we did it, and then everyone kind of just said, let's bring it to the board so you can see it and everyone else can see it.
And I just want to say for the record, I love the ideas with the sledding hill. I think it's great. But I just feel that it has to go hand in hand with the parking lot.
And this, for the record, this wasn't a rain delay. Active Core was a lot of rain delays. We were designed under roof, so there's no rain delays there.
Well, it still goes back to the point the mayor just made, which is, and echoes Trustee Gray, that at some point, I'm not sure I want to be part of the organization that has a reputation that we pass something in January, it doesn't get signed on our end until months later, and then we're going to use that as an excuse to then try and get out of something we've agreed to, just from a reputation standpoint. Even though there may be some, and again, I don't think there's even a legal loophole because we've been part of put this on the schedule, and this hasn't been TRIA delaying things and not getting a job done. We sat on a contract that we approved for months, and we've now pressed pause to say, let's put this to a committee of the whole, et cetera, have to put that on a schedule. So I just think I don't even think there's a loophole there from our end if we wanted one. What I'm hearing is we agree, those that have spoken, we agree that the Village Green there's a consensus to let's shift this to Village Green or add Village Green, right, to a schematic design. Some of the background on this is when we first sat in a smaller group to talk about, this is my recollection, but when we first talked, we met in a smaller group to talk about disc golf, which is what we've all said is in the current plans, phase 1 after active core, which is well on its way and a rather inexpensive item for us. In that conversation, part of the disc golf discussion started involving Village Green areas, open play areas, et cetera, and that's when we, I think, in a smaller group said, hold on a second, right? And had to be reminded to some extent that Village Green wasn't part of this in January. And we talked about it in the committee of the whole, but why the decisions were made at the time to leave that on the table, even though that is number 4, and some of this in the phasing and schematic design is working on 5, 6, et cetera. It was a cost. And now I think this discussion is the dollars and the potential of dollars has changed since we made those decisions. We made those decisions, to Trustee Gray's point. Those decisions have been made. We said, please go out and design these features, right? What I'm not hearing is anything that's specific to design flaws or, there are things that on our end have changed and our opinions on things have changed, but we said, TRIA, go design us a fishing pier, right? They're designing us a fishing pier. We've said, and I think this is rightfully so, that our opinions change over time based on the ground today things. Do we need a fishing pier or is there something else? That debate is still, I think, a valid one, whether we actually need a pier or something that makes it ADA compliant or whether we just need some access. But we said, the village said, TRIA, go design a fishing pier. They're doing their job in designing a fishing pier. And I would say that on open play, where I think what I'm hearing a little bit is what I would consider mistakes of the past that we've made as an organization, in which we can always pull up our bootstraps and do it internally. And I think we've paid a price in the long term for doing it that way without having the professional people, whether it's HR Green or TRIA, doing the engineering, doing the design. We can go out there with our guys who, in my opinion, are already overtaxed, right? Because we're talking about, we hear routinely from a staffing level, we're operating with a staff unrivaled. Another, I think, point from my earlier point. We've got a staff that's already taxed that we're going to say, hey, open play, which you referred to earlier as sort of the ankle breaker, right? Because it was a fairway. It's not a pristine, flat fairway. It is ruts and things that if you're going to open that up and say if, right, the current discussion on open play is you're going to have an area where families or some of the sports teams could just come and in a unstructured way necessarily, just have an open field that's leveled out and could be used for various uses. That's not something that I think we can just turn over to our overtaxed staff and say, hey, can you go drop some dirt out there and maybe rake it and fill in some holes, right? And I know that's being a bit facetious, but that's essentially kind of what we're saying, because we don't have any mass grading equipment that I'm aware of, right? And so I just think when I hear those things, or I hear, let's just focus on one thing, that's kind of how we got here. We talked earlier about phase one, not having a master planner. Let's just do phase one. And we're learning that some of the 319 stuff may impact things that are now we're planning in other areas. But we didn't have the master planner at the time. And in the long run, you're spending way more money. We're spending way more money on the things that are cheaper to do on the front end and make sure the old example we've used in discussions like this, if you're building a house, make sure you have the same architect that's doing your kitchen, that's doing your family room and your bathroom, so that when they all walk out, there's a plan, right? And that's, I think, the goal here. To Trustee Gray's point, we've approved it. We've approved over $70,000 already. What's before us tonight is, do we add Village Green to that schematic design? And I hear a consensus that yes, we do. And I think that's a good thing that I fully agree with. And plans, I will say this, just to wrap my comments, plans don't go stale. The comp plan analogy is a great one. That is the comp plan for it, so that we know these parts fit each other in the long-term planning. Just like comp plan, could some future board on some portions of this that aren't constructed, could they change it? Sure, they could change it, but they're going to have to make a vote to change it. But there is a path of a forethought, and that's what I'm not hearing here, is any forethought on how we make all of these things combine. You know that earlier I agree on the steps versus prioritizing the road into the sled hill. Absolutely. Those are the things that, yes, those are the discussions we should be having that with today's environment and what we know today have changed. Let's have that discussion. That's part of this process. And I think this process has gone well. The last comment I would make is we just opened Active Core that is, to me, one of the best assets this town has. And judging by the use of it in the last couple of weeks since we opened it at all hours, I think the community agrees. And that is a project that was designed and overseen by TRIA. So the pause and let's take a break and let's rebid something, I don't see the reason to do it. We're sitting in a building that TRIA oversaw. This is the Active Core is the second project that TRIA has overseen that came in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars under budget. And so I'm just missing the reason why we would pause and say, hey, this hasn't worked for us, because I have no examples of where this hasn't worked for us. I think it's worked incredibly well for us. And I don't see the reason to press pause on that topic.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. In terms of handing it over internally to staff, I was specifically referring to a path to the fishing pond behind the service building. That's all. The open play area, I just don't know that we need to involve an architect to design a flat piece of grass. If we're going to move forward on that, I think we need to use that area to accommodate a temporary location for next year's fest, while work on the Village Green potentially could move forward without being hindered.
So on that point, I completely agree. As we talk about the fest, and I know this is a larger topic, and Trustee Gray and I have talked about this, and I've talked to others, I've talked to Carlo about it. I think the fest is a great event for this town. I do. I've never personally cared whether it's a profit motive, whether we're in the black, in the red. It's a community event, right? You guys have done a phenomenal job on making sure that we've always turned a profit, for lack of a better word, on that event. That is, and I've said that before at this dais, that is kudos for the time and effort that the volunteers put into that. So that's a very key event for this town, no doubt about it. What I would say, though, is that we're a changing town, and as we bring an asset like this online, I'm not sure that Homer Fest looks as it does today in 4 or 5 years. If we go forward with some sort of amphitheater or some sort of programming for concerts in the park, and we're doing that on a monthly basis or what have you, I'm not sure that a 4-day concert within the beer tent is the same level of draw if the same type of bands are playing all throughout the summer. And so when I think of that, of a potentially changing event as we go, and one real quick, just in discussion with Trustee Gray, the beer tent portion isn't what turns a profit for us. It may even lose a small amount of money. It's the carnival that drives the profit for us on that event. And that's something that I don't think we ever lose, that component of it. But as we talk about this park and we talk about the planning and the very serious concerns about the year of work that goes in by these volunteers, and it is a full year of work, to then be dependent on whether it rains the night before, I think is unfair. I just think that's completely unfair, and we need to address that one way or another. Even if that means, this is where the forethought comes in. Having forethought, because optimally, as we solve that, and this is all part of the Village Green area, but as we solve that, is there a way we can solve the temporary, what I see as the next couple year issue, and at the same time spend that money with forethought on what that future looks like? Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Maybe the answer is, no, we're gonna have to spend some money just to solve a temporary drainage issue and do that math, and that's a discussion. What I would say with regards to the open play being a potential use of that, of a flat area, we've talked about that in the smaller group. Yeah, we've talked about that, right? Because we think if we do a Village Green, we're looking at maybe 1 year. So it would be temporary. In our discussions about that area, I don't think that works for a couple of reasons in talking to you and others, whether it's the fireworks and the fall zone or just disconnected from the carnival. One area that I would say, and maybe this has been examined, we haven't talked about this, but is that flat field just north of the parking lot where the carnival would be on. So just west of Active Core. That is, from my eyes, a fairly flat open field that's still attached to the carnival. And maybe again, I don't know, I've not seen a grading plan on it. Maybe it's not as flat as it looks. Maybe it has other issues. We just have not talked about that area as being that setup area, again, what I view for a year. And the only reason why I think this is kind of important is because if we all agree that we're going to do something Village Green related, and we think that's the next step as we get these numbers in, as much as I love Homer Fest and as much as I think it's a key event for this town, it is 4 days. And if we're talking about can't move on to construction of whatever the next phase is until after those 4 days, I'd like to explore every potential of where we could move that so we can continue with construction too and go out next spring, because my fear is, let's say it's an amphitheater for argument's sake. We do an amphitheater and that's the next step and we all say, great, that's the next step. If you're not starting construction and you're putting that off till after the 4-day fest, you could run into the same issues we just ran into on Active Core, which was a very rainy fall and a historically rainy spring. And then we're losing not just next season, but we're potentially losing the season after that, and we're 2 years out from having any, because I don't know how you would plan that concert in the park series when you're not sure, right? If we would have locked in some events here at Active Core for July, we would have been in trouble. So I want to make sure as we talk about this, we explore all those options for the potential of still making Homer Fest the best it can be, but not also basing all of these decisions over a great 4-day fest, but a 4-day fest. So I know that's long.
I asked Tria initially about draining that land, and Jim told me, he said, I can build you a piece of property that'll drain in 10 minutes. He said, but like to your point, it's a 4-day event. You're going to water that for 361 days. Every 10 minutes after that, because like ball field, it's not going to hold any water. So I absolutely appreciate that, and I agree wholeheartedly with what does this Village Green look like? I think we had said this even before. I have a hard time with, I came from Oak Lawn, I grew up in Burbank and came from Oak Lawn. Oak Lawn, we built a Village Green because there was nothing left. There was this little postage stamp, and it was like you could identify that. I'm having a hard time getting my head around what's a Village Green in the middle of 100 acres of green. It's kind of like, all right, you're going to need to parse that one out for me a little bit, So I appreciate that we're all talking about this. And the thing about Homerfest, even the committee agrees, we don't know what Homerfest is going to look like as this park comes on, this property comes on, and we do utilize it more. You might start to suffer from, another thing going on at the park, which is a great thing to have a full calendar of events going on. But to Trustee Burion's point, that might diminish how much people want to come here for Homerfest for 4 days. So I absolutely get that. And we're anxious to see how this goes forward, but we do need to do something. Exploring other areas, I have no problem with that. We've talked about that at the committee. We have to get the assistant to the village manager, Matt, out there with his good shoes on after a good rain, and he can tell us where all of the impacted areas are, because I've ruined enough shoes. And but we do need to probably move it, even if we were going to go forward with it, the Village Green. I agree. We can't wait until the end of June to pull the trigger on it. We've wasted half a season of building. So if we're going to go forward with this area, Homerfest is going to have to move somewhere. But that somewhere might require some intermediate attention, just to get it on there for a year, maybe 2. Let's face it, we've bumped up against delays enough. Let's all be cognizant of the fact that it could be 2 years, but it would have to be improved, possibly improved. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about that at our next committee meeting as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the area that Brian was suggesting that's to the northwest of Active Core is probably eliminated from possible fest site because they need access for the carnival rides, they need access for the bands, they need access for the vendors, and there just isn't that kind of access to that area.
I think he was talking about still keeping the carnival on the pavement, if I'm just moving all the kind of entertainment area just there. So,
Or even extending it a little bit around the ring road, or being creative. We're talking about a 1-year solution.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right?
I was just saying.
We'll talk about that at our next committee meetings and see if they're, right, we'll consider the open play area or the, or that area to the west
And this is kind of that forethought of, earlier we talked about the potential of a pad, right? Putting some sort of pad in the middle of the village green for a tent and could be more, and before we ever got there, I just want to know we've explored every other, because it is somewhat temporary, only because I don't see Homerfest as it is today the same in 5 years.
Right.
That's all.
And to the comment that we need to be fiscally responsible for the taxpayers' dollars, I don't think, and John Sawyer's kind of alluded to this, you will find another village that's more conservative or healthy than Homer Glen is. And our spending that we've done, at least since I've been here prior to that, is something that we can be extremely proud of. We've never done anything that is outside of where it would raise any flags or anything like that. We are a very healthy board and have always been responsible and conservative.
And that's not going to change. One quick question. Everyone keeps talking about Homerfest on this for the tent of where it sits right now. And yeah, we did screw up, but all that really happened is no one looked east before they decided to put the tent on and just got a pitch. They can fix drainage problems in a heartbeat. You're not that far away from the street to kick it out the street, let it go down a sewer. This whole place has got sewers in them. I think we're not looking at the right thing for right now. We're trying to figure out what we can do with this park in a fiscally responsible way. We have the money to do it. We have the foresight to see exactly what we're looking for right now. Why not get the price for it? Because the prices are going to go down. He's already said it when he goes in there. So you're worried about spending another $34,000 or $35,000, and there's just a couple things that we looked at before. It adds up to about 40 or 50. So it's costing us nothing to get to exactly what we want in the first place. I think that what I would do is I'd find an engineer, have him take a look and see what he can do. Hell, they could put a berm around the back end of it so that if it did rain, it could run it around. They could put sewage in it or just the sewers in it, drain sewers, it'll pick up the water before it even gets there. I think moving it from here to here to here to here to try to find a place for it, I don't think we need to do that. If we hire an engineer just to let him look to see what it is, yeah, I don't know if they would even charge us for it. If they get the deal, they get the deal.
Here's, I think, the issue with that. I totally agree if it's going to be there. The problem with putting the tent there next year is if we decide, let's move on a Village Green phase of construction, you can't go to construction until after that fest. And you're losing months of construction weather, and that risks everything else. That's the only, that's the real drawback there, which is why I think you just examine these other potential sites for 1 year.
All right, and now I understand your point on it. But in the meantime, we've got a couple months before we would have to do anything in the first place. Let's just get an engineer, get a price. If that's the case, let's get the prices from Jim for what it's going to cost to do in the Village Green, because otherwise we're still right back at square one and we've done nothing.
Well, the Village Green area is still, even if we said, hey, let's put Homerfest next to Active Core for the next 4 years, whatever Village Green area is, it's going to be an area where we're going to want to use it. It's not just a binocular section.
Right.
So it's going to have to drain somehow. I mean, right now, it's still set up as a golf course, essentially. It's going like this. Now, you're right, Mayor, we did have our tent to the west side of, in a bowl. We were kind of cognizant of that, though. We didn't want to disconnect from the carnival, especially being a new property. So we were really conscious of that. So we were unfortunate to be down in a bit of a swale, but even if, you know, Homerfest notwithstanding, if we were going to use that as a farmer's market, if we wanted to put a tent up just to go out and celebrate the veterans or something, we still are going to have to do something when we decide what this whole thing is. Drainage, proper drainage, you know, not 10-minute drainage, but obviously proper drainage is going to, it's going to have to be on all of the spaces,
Right.
essentially.
Right, but that's pretty much what we're asking them to do.
Absolutely.
Well, the other important part, I think, of going to this phase of schematic design is because, as we talked earlier, as we're making phasing decisions, that's all dictated by dollars. Right now, in the estimates you presented earlier, the amphitheater portion, just the, whatever, the pavilion, whatever you want to call it, was in there for like $1.3 million. Well, I don't think anybody here knows what $1.3 million pavilion looks like, or whether that's more than maybe we think we need or less. And we don't know that. So how do we make any other phasing decisions when we still don't know the prices on what this would be?
Right.
And so that to me is what is before us, is go to work on that and let's figure out what that looks like. A $1.3 million pavilion, we may all look at each other and go, no way, we don't need that. Or maybe we say the opposite, I don't know. But I don't know what that looks like until we go to design and have those conversations.
I just have a question. On the activity area, when you were talking in the committee of the whole about the splash pad versus bubbler, you're heading in the splash pad direction? Okay.
And I just want to reiterate for the board, if you remember, obviously I've been around since the Village Hall and everything, kind of the initial designs in terms of this community room being on this side of the building versus the other side of the building and its access outside and the doors outside. We've had all those discussions back then. So I'm very actively involved in a lot of the decisions that were kind of made, and even being in the PRI plan of laying out everything there. But more importantly, 2 years ago, we lost the summer of construction where everyone's kind of like, I wish we would have done something. I wish we would have done some plans. We should have done, worked on, and we lost the summer. And then by the time we kind of figured out what we were actually doing, and then kind of saying at the same time, a year and a half ago, we said, let's do the schematic design, or let's do the master plan and the active core at the same time. If you want them out and you want to do something for this summer, that's where that actually happened. So that's why active core went and we started working with master plan. I don't want to lose another summer, so part of what I actually told you guys is I'm going to try to keep you guys on task. The board can overrule it and you can slow down, be fast, and so forth. But the ultimate goal is if you have a project that you want to go out to bid, we want to be out in December, January, February to get your best prices. If you're fiscally responsible, which I know you guys are, that's when you're going to get contractors that are hungry. You're going to get the contractors before they get all the summer work. You're going to get the best pricing, and you get at least the biggest variety of contractors to work on this job, right? This active core job, we kind of bid out way late on this and doing this. So I don't want to make those mistakes again. So when we talk about schedule, this entire thing, we can do schematic design, we can talk about all those things, but in the back of my mind, I'm really thinking about the construction period for next summer and getting a project out of you, if you want to do one for next summer, that we're designing it, and we're not going to get it designed now by December or January, but try to still get it in by February. And if some of those, we've got to make some of those decisions. But I understand if you want more information about all the phases, that we can do that. But if you really want to do something construction-wise, we need to really talk about that.
Mayor, I'd just like to add that this isn't a condition on, I think this is my motion. It's not a condition, it's not an amendment, but it's a strong suggestion, is that we have 2 new board members, Trustee Pasmino and Trustee Holtz, even though Trustee Holtz was the clerk back then, who really need to weigh in on what their vision on the Village Green is. I wouldn't mind being re-polled as well, now that we have the benefit of having some time gone by, and I'm sure the rest of the board members probably would appreciate that too, on what we see in a Village Green area. How do we see an amphitheater? What would you like to see? You know, what are your thoughts? Like to Trustee Burion's point, you know, about what does 1-3 get me? I'm not asking you to tell me what 1-3 gets me. I want you to ask us, what do you want to use this for, and then design to that. I mean, we've talked a lot about concert in the park series and things like that. I mean, a nice stage where we could have some amateur theater going on as well, you know, things of that nature. Something with bathrooms as opposed to these, I mean, true bathrooms, you know, in a storage area for event type stuff at that area. So again, I would like to be re-polled, and I think it's fair that the 2 new board members be polled, you know, to begin with. So again, not a condition, not an amendment, but a strong suggestion.
I have no issue with it, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't want to lead anyone into something that's going to, you know, there's questions that they could have that could be very valuable to us. All right.
I have a brief question. How many hours for schematic design, how many hours goes into $105,000?
Oh, you got me there. We haven't calculated it by that. The original hours that were based on that was based on our contract and sort of a percentage of construction costs, which was translated to just that schematic design phase. And I do have to remind everybody, PRI's original costs that were in there were much higher. So our original contract that you negotiated with us years ago was lower than that. How that translated to hours, I haven't done that.
And it says here in an August letter, it says, schematic design drawings of all items will be completed in 2 months from approval.
Correct. We were working with the village thinking that we're working this in January and February.
Oh, no, this is dated August 29th.
Oh, that's the new one. That's the new one that you're approving, correct. So the original one that was approved in January but signed in the summer was still 2 to 3 months. We started the work, and then we got put on pause at the level of drawings that you saw today. And then we said, we may need to add the amphitheater. So we said, stop the consultants from doing any more work. So we stopped the HR Green and JSD. And we said, let's meet with the committee of the whole. Let's go over this. And then if the amphitheater is added, then we'll add that in there, bring that up to speed, and then continue on the same path. Because we didn't want to do 5 phases and kind of be done with those and then bring the amphitheater with you and double up on meetings. And then you don't have all the information at the same time with the amphitheater and those first 5 phases. We'd be ahead of the cart there.
Trustee Suisse, maybe I can, and I think I said this earlier, but if there is a delay, it's on us by pressing pause and saying, wait, Village Green may be a higher priority while they were designing the ones that we had approved. And I would say in a more general sense, my opinion on this, if there's been delays on everything we've done, it's almost always been more on our side, whether it's months to sign a contract or just us not focusing on the best time to go to bid. We've had those conversations before. And so if there's been a pause on this, it's been because we've said, whoa, before we keep going on this, we think from feedback from the community mostly, and a movie in the park this summer, we think, hold on, let's have this discussion on Village Green. And that's taken quite a bit of time to get to today. So I just want to clarify that from our side, that this hasn't been us calling TRIA saying, where is it, right? This is us, it's the opposite.
I was just asking a question.
No, I know, I just want to clarify that because I think that's an important thing.
And it's important not to rush like crazy into something when you don't know
also agree
what's happening, because how is he going to do a design when he doesn't even know what we really want?
Well, see, now this goes back to the point, right? And that's his point of he's going to keep us on task because at the end of the day, it's going to be up to us to continue having these discussions in short order if we want to go out to bid at the optimal time. And the other thing, at one point you didn't make, you made the money comment. on going out to bid at the optimal time. But what I've learned through now 2 of these projects of being on the construction committees is that it's not just money. It's also what this is my observation, right? I don't know if Jim agrees or not, but when you go out at the optimal time, you've got these contractors setting their year. And when you go out, as we did on this one later in the year, May, June, you're now, my observation, getting contractors that are still looking for work. And you know, what I would consider maybe the more optimal contractors have their year planned out and they're not bidding. And you have fewer bids, which is what happened here, even though, you know, within a girl, they were hundreds of thousands of dollars lower than the next lowest bid. But that's another, you can speak to that better than I can. That's my observation from being through 2 projects now, the Village Hall and Active Core. That's another risk in not going out at the optimal time.
Right, and if you remember that project, Active Core, was very rushed in terms of the committee of the whole designs and trying to get the decisions and getting that out to bid and getting the package. Now, when we're doing this project, we're taking all that information that when we were on the Parks Committee and we're dealing with PRI and all the input that we had from there and massaging that plan, and that'll change. We sat in a meeting and we laugh about it that I was presenting the Christmas tree right behind whatchamacallit, and everyone said, we're moving the Christmas tree, we're sorry, we forgot to tell you. So we have to pivot and turn and change the design and say that that's something that you made, so we're adjusting that, right? Great spot for the Veterans Memorial. And to your point about fees, I know you're always interested in our fees and always watching on that. I think Carrie can attest, she's kind of said, hey, we're talking about disc golf. I know it's not part of your fee or you're not working on that phase. And I was like, don't even ask. I want to be involved in that so I can hear that because it helps me plan the rest of the park. So I could do those meetings. It's not part of my fee or anything like that. So I'm committed to the village, as you guys, most of you know. And even the more I know about this helps me plan and have my team plan the entire park for you as we move forward.
Well, we got to take this to vote, or we're going to...
There's a first and a second.
Okay. So well, that's what I'm asking. Is there any other comments or anything? So, Madam Clerk?
Okay. Trustee Rogers?
Yes.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Berrien?
Aye.
Trustee Pazmino?
Aye.
Trustee Gray?
Aye.
Trustee Holtz?
Aye.
If I can, we want to make sure we kind of get some of the questions that were left from the committee of the whole. Is it during this topic in terms of design team? Again, keeping everyone on task, I want to make sure what's our direction and who we're meeting with.
So I was just making some notes here. We spent a lot of time on the timing, the phasing, so I think we got some clear directions tonight from the village board on how to move forward on that. The other question I wanted to get clarification and direction from the village board is you know, since I've been here, which is, believe it or not, it's going to be 6 months, October 1st, is that we've been working on, we've had this the Construction Oversight Committee that has been helping staff and helping our contractors and TRIA oversee the construction of the Active Core. So as we move forward, I need to get direction from the board and understand what your desires are as it relates to, as we get into more of the specifics on the design schematics and getting from design schematics to actual design engineering plans that we can then put full into a bid. I need to know how to do that. Obviously, we're going to have staff that's involved with that. And I guess my suggestion would be to continue to have Beth and Brian be part of that, since they were part of the Oversight Construction Committee as well. But I think it's important that we discuss this, and I need to have input from the village board, and I wanted to make sure that we discuss that tonight. And how do you want us to move forward? Staff, me as well as our staff, on continuing to communicate and getting feedback and running different plans and different schematics and different ideas. I made some notes while we were just sitting here talking about repolling, the basically surveying your boards and what you would like to see in some of these things, particularly the village green. But I need clear direction from the village board how to move forward on that, so there's no confusion moving forward.
I would like to see the trustees rotate at those meetings.
Or at least, and I don't know, maybe this is a question for the attorney. If, I know the Open Meetings Act, like if Brian and Beth is attending these meetings, but I didn't think, because I thought I checked with Illinois, that if another trustee attends, as long as they do not participate or say anything, that it is not against an open meetings violation. That it would be open and, like, if you two are part of that.
As an observer, you mean?
That's what I
I'm
need
gonna
to,
defer to
that's what
you.
I need to know for sure. Because, you know, somebody told me, oh, as long as you could attend, but as long as you don't say anything, and as long as you don't participate.
No, the Open Meetings Act says if there's a majority of a quorum, so that means 3, that are present where village business is discussed or public business is discussed. Even if you don't say a word, you're just sitting there quiet as a church mouse. It's still a violation of the Open Meetings Act because there are 3 of you there and public business is being discussed. Now, the only thing with that is that you can still have that meeting. 3 of you can attend. The key is, in order to comply with the Open Meetings Act, you have to post it 48 hours beforehand. So that's, yeah, I mean, and you can still do that, but the idea that, I get what you're saying, but the fact that one of you may not say anything or participate in the discussions is still a violation, unfortunately.
So this is a standing schedule meeting, right? I mean, you guys right now have, didn't you throughout the active core have a kind of a
Part of the
standard?
construction committee.
Right. So I mean, it's not that burdensome to publish an agenda and to post a schedule of meetings.
The construction. What we're talking about is the construction committee that was a standing meeting every
The oversight.
Monday.
Right.
Construction, yeah. This is not necessarily just construction.
Yeah, I anticipate those meetings, which were the construction oversight meetings that I've been attending since I've been here, are going to wane off, slowly, they're going to go away. Because we're through our final punch list. We had a meeting today. We discussed final punch list. We're doing closeout of the active core right now. So I anticipate, you know, in the next few months, we're going to have all that done, and there's not going to be a need to have a bi-weekly construction meeting on the active core anymore because we're going to close that project out. But what I need is clear direction on, as we're moving forward to this next design schematic things. There's things that are going to be discussed. There's things that Jim's going to call me up and say, hey, Carrie, what about this? Or what about this? Or what do you think about this? And I need to know how the board wants me to interact with you. Do you want me to come to all 7 of you? Or personally, it'd be easier to just have a couple that I can go to and bounce some things off as we're making progress, and then we come back collectively at a periodic basis like we did today, where I say, okay, this is kind of where we're at, and these are some additional input I need from you. But I want to make sure that we're discussing it openly today on the record, and I get clear direction from the majority of the board tonight.
I sat down with Trustee Berrien and Trustee Rogers, asked them if they would stay on. They've been doing this now since the park started. I have no issue whatsoever making them an open meeting, and I'm sure they don't make it, but I want the people that have been working on this to keep working on it. They've done an absolutely wonderful job. A trustee wants to go to it, that's absolutely fine, but if they walk in and on a swinging basis, you know a little bit, you know a little bit, you know a little bit, and before you know it, nobody knows anything. So they agree that they would be no issue.
Can we bring it forward as a mayor's recommendation for a task force, and we all vote on that?
Yeah.
I mean, at our next meeting, if you bring it forward, because that's the way we do committees, that's the way we do boards, that's the way we do plan commission, everything. It's your recommendation with the consent and approval of the board. So why don't we just handle it that way? And through the design phase, like you said, if it's just the 2 of them, it doesn't have to be published as an open meeting, you know, for right now, and maybe when we transition into the construction phases, maybe we can make them open meetings, published, and you know, with published agendas. So to Trustee Suisse's point, anybody can go, right, if they're available.
Well, that's the thing. There's sometimes that we don't know, but I do know that when this went on before, they were at all the meetings.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So that to me is huge because, you know, most of us up here work. So it's very hard for you to be able to leave work exactly when you have to, especially when I look at Trustee Berrien, he's down in Springfield. He drives up from Springfield, goes to the meeting and goes back.
It's not just me. I mean, this is everybody. Most of these meetings are during the day, during business hours.
Right, and it is
It's
very-
not an easy thing to get
No.
to regularly.
And that is not just me. We all live very busy
No, I
lives.
agree,
But
because
to
we got
the
some
village
coming down.
manager's point, I think we should do it on our agenda, next meeting. You know, you bring it forward as a recommendation and let us all vote on it.
And then this way, everyone's on the exact same page. If you want to hear everything that's going on, you guys can all go, and everyone's hearing what's going on, and this way, there's, I think it would just make it easier. So I will be more than happy to bring it up, you know. Yes?
A couple points on a couple of things that were said. I think a valid point was made last December at a workshop when they were talking about the AOC meetings and whether or not they should become public, and it was stated something to the effect if it would not be as an effective meeting if it was public, that some of the discussion would have to be kind of curtailed. I'm not sure if I'm paraphrasing that correctly, so I'm not necessarily in agreement that it should be a publicly posted agenda meeting. I do agree with Keith that it should be an official appointed committee, because that did not happen in this previous instance. And I'm not necessarily in agreement on that choice.
It wasn't just in this previous instance, it was also the same on the village hall with the mayor and I.
Correct, because we didn't have a village manager at the time. So I feel like you and the mayor kind of took that role on, and it carried over into the active core. But there was no public discussion, there was no public appointment of them.
No, I just mean, it wasn't just active core.
Right.
There also was the same thing at the mayor's request for the village hall also. So
With-
I'm not opposed to,
yeah.
making this a formalized thing. I actually, after the last year, I'd prefer that, right? So that is, I not only am fine with that, I endorse it, right? So.
That would help us get some clear direction, so we have go-to people that we can kind of.
Wait until our next meeting?
Can't make.
But
We're gonna start, if you give us this, we still have a lot of homework.
He'll talk to me.
Yeah, she's my front person. I don't need to talk to anybody else.
I have a comment on the manager when you said, who should you go to for, yes, they could be, but I think you need to get one or two other opinions as well. If, like you said, Jim will come to you and say, what do you think about this? I think just, to get another opinion or two, it's not like you have to go through all 6, 7 people.
Right, and I tried to do that, and I will continue to try to do that. There's a lot of different ways that I've tried to reach out and communicate and be transparent with all of the board members, with our biweekly meetings that I hold with each one of you, as well as through manager's notes and other things. So we will continue to do that, and as things come forward, I will reach out, and I talk to almost every one of you every single week, if not every single day, and sometimes. So I just want you to know that we are committed, that we will be as transparent as possible, but there are going to be times when we're going to have to make some decisions, and I just want to make sure I know what the rules are.
Trustee Suisse, one last comment on that, because I think there's been some confusion on this over time, and I understand it. The design of Active Core was everybody was involved, everybody had input, everybody had a final vote on it, on everything, right? Nothing that's been designed at Active Core wasn't inputted from everyone on the board at the time. And I would say even at the time, clerk was free to make comments and participate in that. That's the design step, right? And that's part of what we're talking about here. That's sometimes different than the construction side of it, in that some of those decisions at times are a little bit more, a contractor needs an answer and doesn't have 2 weeks, things like that. Now, even on that, I've said we can do better on communication even on that. And certainly committed to that, and I think a big step towards that has been the staff memos, the village manager. Those are phenomenal things to make sure we're all, not just on this, but vice versa on everything else, and those have been a great asset. I just want to make sure we understand nothing is, whether there's a committee or not, nothing is being designed, nothing is being anything without the input of the full board and the final vote of that, and I just think that's an important distinction.
Design in terms of going out to bid. The schematic design, we're working together in the bits and pieces, but when it gets to that going out to bid, that
And when
goes to the full
Trustee
board.
Burren and myself did the inside of the building, the first thing we did after every meeting is we went to everyone and told them what happened for the day, what we approved, what we didn't approve, where we had a headache, where we're correcting something. So, I mean, this is no different. It's, like I said, the biggest part of this is people that still have a job that they they don't have the option of being able to leave whenever they want to leave. So we'll get this put on the agenda for the next meeting next month, and then we'll get this thing straightened out. And then from there, if there's no other comment, I'd like to take a vote to.
Wait.
Mayor, I'm sorry, one last thing. I appreciate the comments you made about active core and the roles that we played. But in those meetings, in those construction meetings, for more than a year and still ongoing, Trustee Rogers and I were two people, but we have lots of staff that we relied on in those meetings and made these decisions as a group that have put a ton of work. And I think that's maybe been missed in all of this as we look at active core that's now open and done. I'm not sure that we've ever said, we did at the grand opening, but I guess maybe this is another time just to thank the staff, specifically those involved in those bi-weekly meetings that are time intensive, and thank you for all your help on that, because that's a key component. It's not like Beth and I sat there and made decisions. It was as a team with staff.
No, I agree, and I know what the staff did, and I thank them very much for that too. But our issue right now is I need some of the trustees on this, and now I'm inviting all the trustees, but I want the main two to still be you and Beth. You know every single solitary thing about the park, and I would like to keep it that way.
Mayor?
Okay, it's all approved. All
Mayor,
right,
just a
yes.
quick question. On the committee, on this committee that Brian and, well, Trustee Varian and Rogers is on, is there staff members that are part of that committee for every day?
Yes.
Is John
Yes.
Robinson and, well, John
Well, I don't know,
Robinson
I don't know if John goes to every single, Matt's at them.
John said everyone, Mike said everyone, Joe said
Okay.
everyone.
So they're a part of that committee? too.
They're a
Okay.
group,
I don't
yes.
know, I don't know if it's gonna maintain the same way because we have new people now, you know, there's another engineer, there's a park person, so I don't know if it'll be the same.
Right,
Yeah,
so.
I would simply say I've never been part of a meeting, to my recollection, in which it was Trustee Rogers and I without staff. We've never, there's
Yeah, well, I didn't know
always
if there
staff.
was,
It's always
like,
been
people
staff,
that were always there, okay.
Yeah, as a village manager, obviously, I'm going to be attending all these. Matt will be attending all these. And depending on what phase we are in the project, we'll be pulling in different people as well on staff as the expertise.
Okay, if there is nothing else, consider a motion approving change order number 2 for the 151st Street Bike Trail project for a not-to-exceed amount of $10,000.
So moved.
Trustees, who did that? Ann?
Yeah.
No, Trustee Holst. Suisse. It is understood that the work will include the extension of a 4-foot concrete sidewalk on the east side ridge of Eagle Ridge Drive, the installation of a 288 accessible path walk ramps, new depressed curb and gutter at both ramp locations, and final restoration. So,
Mayor, this is just going to finish up the path that we have on 151st Street where it comes up to Eagle Ridge. Right now it is running straight to the public sidewalk, and it's causing some problems for the homeowner on the corner. Right. People are using his driveway
for a cut across.
Well, they're using it to more than they should to access it. So this will encourage the flow from one public sidewalk to the next and onto the public pathway. So, and hopefully this will mitigate the interference on his driveway. So,
okay.
I would just like to say that I feel like we've done a disservice to the property owner there. I don't understand why it wasn't done correctly in the first place, and why we're gonna have to go back out there and fix it. I think that fence was like not thought through. I stood out there talking to him for about a half hour, a little over a week ago, and watched countless people cutting across not just his apron or the public sidewalk, but also his grass, and walking, you know, through his yard. That is a huge, not huge, but it's a very long, all downhill section of path. There's no like signage, safety signage of any kind along that downhill grade. I think there needs to be. There needs to be stop ahead. There needs to be a number of safety things put in place. And, you know, I think until you see it, until you're there, you don't really realize the impact that removing that berm had on his property. And I think we could be better neighbors.
Well, we all approved it. We all saw it. We all approved it. It was a matter of the sidewalk not being in there was just something that as soon as it was done, right, we were like, wait, we got to add the sidewalk because everybody's going on the guy's driveway. We all saw it. We all approved it. We all knew what we were doing. We didn't take anything off of his property. That all of that, I always put it back to it. When I lived in Flossmoor, I had a shed that I put on an easement, and I knew that if ComEd had to come in and take that shed, they were taking that shed. When you put a berm on an easement, it's a risk that you take. I feel like we were good neighbors. You reached out to him many a times, despite what he said, but then you did refresh his memory, and we all approved it. We all saw what it was, and now we're correcting it or tweaking it, and we did nothing wrong here.
So I guess I don't understand why it wasn't extended all the way to the street in the first place.
I don't know. You saw the plan. You approved it.
I wasn't on the board.
You didn't look at this. We
I was not on
approved
the
this.
board when that was approved, Beth.
Okay, and so you've never had a problem commenting on anything, and you never have said, wait a second, you guys, did you think about this?
With all due respect, the only time I've commented has been during workshops.
I'll disagree with you.
Typically, because this was a grant funding project, it was designed to state and federal guidelines. So AASHTO guidelines for bike trails, if you're going, you couldn't just extend the trail to the curb, to the street, without having access to the other side. We were trying to stay within an original grant budget. So, and typically you don't want to direct traffic, pedestrian traffic, especially anybody wheelchair accessible, that sort of thing, onto a street without any access onto the other side. So that's why it was just tied to the existing sidewalk rather than extending it to the street.
Were any of our, I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Mike for his comment, because I mean, I didn't know that, so.
Any other paths in town, have we used similar grant funding with those restrictions?
No, I believe this is the first that we had used this grant funding on. I mean, we've used other
Any grant funding that required the ADA compliance, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, typically it should, they should all be.
Yeah, so, and that's been my question, and Carrie and I have talked about it at length. I'm fine with doing what the plan is right now, mostly because we've got a sidewalk on the east side that's a sidewalk to nothing. So I think this solves a problem from that side too. So I'm okay with it, and I'm going to approve it as presented. I just want to make sure, as we say, that we have to do this because we have, and I don't know all the funding on the pass. We have other areas in town where that's not the case, where it is a ramp with a tactile strip to a curb on the other side. And I just want to be clear that we're saying I'm good with it, because if there wasn't a sidewalk to nowhere on the other side of the street, I'd probably say, let's save the money, because we have this in at least 2 or 3 other areas that I know of. So I just want to be clear that we believe we have to do this because of that, and therefore, are we susceptible, based on potential grant funding for other areas, to complaints? And if we are, let's get ahead of it, because for me, the big thing here, and this is one of those issues where we all can do better, right? Trustee Rogers is 100% right. This wasn't approved in the dark of night. We saw the plans, and this is where I know, and I say this all the time, I've got to get better at seeing plans on paper, and then, because the first time I came through Eagle Ridge with my family on bikes, and got to that driveway and went, whoa, 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 we're going to use this guy's driveway as the access point to the trail to the park? Oh, what, this can't stay. I assume there were reasons we couldn't feed out at the stop sign because of major intersection, things like that. This is just one of those things we need to be better as a team at, because we're going back to fix something that shouldn't have been the case. And we have a bike trail, not a sidewalk, but a bike trail pouring onto a sidewalk. And for me, those are 2 different uses, right? On a bike trail, you're doing 15 to 20 miles an hour at a time on a bike. You're not doing that on a sidewalk. And so this gentleman, who I do think has some valid points on this, we turned his driveway into the practical access point, and I'm glad we're fixing that tonight.
The only other point I would make in a way that I think we can be better, even though we had no legal, there was nothing that we legally had to do here, but we did pull, as we put in other access points, we did pull and send things out to entire subdivisions. We made this, and I say we, and I take responsibility for this too, to Trustee Gray's credit. He's the one guy that went over there and knocked on the guy's door, right? When we're going to do something, it's completely our property, right? We have the full right to do it, and fantastic, nobody's challenging that. We should have notified and had a discussion with this, even though we had no legal, I'm missing the word that I want, obligation, to do it. I think we need to be better about that in the future too, that this is somebody that specifically with the way this was designed was going to feed, his driveway was going to feed the park. And that there was no official conversation on the front end is something we all need to do better at. But I'm glad we're remedying it. And, I just would like clarification at some point, don't need it now, on whether there is something that says we have to do it because of the grant funding, and if we open ourselves up, or not open ourselves up, but need to fix it in other areas that we know exist. Sure.
Yeah, and I'd also like to just point out to Trustee Holtz's point about the, it is, and Trustee Burien probably knows this too if he's ridden his bike along it. If you're coming east, it is downhill. You are starting to move. We definitely do need to put some signs out there probably, but.
Some speed bumps.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think what they need
But
to.
Trustee Holtz, it's the purview of your committee, so please bring it there and then bring it to us, in not only that, but I was a big proponent when I was on public safety to have wherever the trails were crossing over the street to have a trail crossing sign. So now I'm not sure about the proximity to the stop sign that's on Eagle Ridge. Maybe it'd be nice if there was a heads up that, hey, there's a trail crossing now here, so.
And we can put signage.
Yeah.
All right, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Suisse. Aye. Trustee Burien.
Aye.
Trustee Pazmino.
Aye.
Trustee Gray.
Aye.
Trustee Holtz.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there any old business? Is there any new business?
I would just wondered what our Halloween hours are going to be. I know the towns around us are doing 4 to 7 this year, if we could do the same.
I think that's what we did last year.
I think we were 3:30 to 6:30, but people don't get off the bus until 3:30, so if we got the extra half hour, it would be great. Something to think about.
Three 30 to 6:30, 3:30 to.
Last year, I'd have to look and see what the notes are.
I could have sworn it was 7 o'clock.
I thought that's what they did last
Well,
year.
because the kids start as soon as they get out of school. They get out of school before 4
Yeah, we had
o'clock.
this discussion last year, I'd have to look at the notes.
Trustee Holtz, let's find out what we did last year, and then whatever we did last year, we'll do this year. We can find that out later. Yeah, all right. But then we'll bring it up at the next meeting too, so this way at least the village does know
Near
what
6
they are.
months, you should know
And we can let the police know, and so we'll get that straightened out. Any other new business? Next then would be executive session. Good. Okay, that's the case. Then next, I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Did you say aye? No, I'm second. I need a